Okay, I'm here with Chris, and I'm Sky, and we're doing the first Go for Games chat thing. We'll probably do more of these in the future, but we're just screwing around. We went to Origins Game Fair, and it was so great that we felt like making a video about it. Would you like to add anything, Olson?
Amongst all the ranting and raving, yes, in fact, we used to do videos and we're going to do more, but Origins was great enough that Sky was motivated to dust off the old YouTubes.
That's right. Here we go. Okay, so just a quick review. Origins Game Fair is in Columbus, Ohio. This one was 2024. We didn't go in 2023. We went in 2022, and I think in 2021 there wasn't one because of COVID and all that.
Correct.
It's another tabletop game convention. Yeah. Okay. So let's just go on to the next thing. Okay. So I did a bunch of meaningless research for everybody here. So Origins Game Fair is owned by the Game Manufacturers Association, also known as GAMA, which they run other GAMA shows that are called GAMA. They're a nonprofit organization that's supposed to be focused on helping companies and upstarts get resources and like design help, whatever, for board games. We have a local thing called Kudo Plays. It's like a similar thing, but very small. GAMA is not small. Anyway, they've been around for a long time. They started in 1975 and have bounced around a lot. And ironically, they have done combo conventions with Gen Con in Milwaukee multiple times. In 88 and 92, which is forever ago, but it happened. Gen Con was actually started, which is the bigger show in Indianapolis, was started by Gary Gygax in Milwaukee, I believe, and went there for several years, then moved to Indianapolis, and there's more backstory to that, but this is not about Gen Con. But because of their weird pairings up over time, and then they're splitting apart, Origins has a weird beef with Gen Con, and like is mad about it all the time. We'll talk about it more later. And of course, go figure, Adepticon is now in Milwaukee, starting in 2025. Okay. Anyway, Milwaukee's important for some reason. Okay, so we went representing TT Combat, which they have 4 miniature games and are also known for making a lot of laser-cut MDF terrain for all kinds of different games and scales and stuff. It's their claim to fame, and then they kind of grew into more with more IPs. So they have Carnivale, which is like a Venetian thing. It's like a Venetian Eldritch Horror combo narrative game. Drop Fleet Commander and Drop Zone Commander, you've probably heard of. They bought those from Hawk War Games. They're still going, and there's still new releases. And then Rumble Slam is the fantasy wrestling game, which it's kind of self-explanatory. Would you like to add anything describing those things?
I mean, some of the games have been around for quite a long time, even if they weren't necessarily around in the U.S., because COVID kind of killed its growth spurt. But now that we've kind of helped take over that in the U.S., things are growing pretty quickly in the U.S. again. Some more than others, but
yeah, the key feature for this video is that these are all miniature games where you buy the models and you paint them. Which for Warhammer people or BattleTech people or even D&D people, it's not that unusual. But I digress. Okay, so these are all numbered. There's like 5 slides of different parts of this. So attendance, who even goes to this? So first of all, Origins Game Fair is mainly a board game convention, plus some role-playing.
it wasn't always, but that's for sure the case now.
Yeah, so there's like 4 pillars to tabletop gaming. There's like card games, board games, role-playing games, and miniature games. Obviously, there's a bunch of themes under those umbrellas, but that's basically it. This is mainly board games and role-playing games. The only thing, they have a really big board game library, and otherwise it's random role-playing events, and in theory, the idea is to go get a bunch of demos of different board games at this convention. Like, that's what it should be for. Us as vendors, or like as a company, we want to see other people's board games and do like cross business stuff, talk about like, oh, where'd you make this? Where'd you make that? How can I get distro for this? Because that game's cool. Like stuff like that, right? Collaboration space. That's what GAMA is supposed to be about, almost more so than the fact that it's a convention for the public to play games. Anyway, there's... Who would you say attends this? How would you describe...
As far as the attendee or as far as the vendors?
The attendee, the demographic. We can talk about the vendors too, but let's just talk about the attendees first.
So I've heard a bunch of stories about how it used to be different back in the day. There used to be more miniature play. There used to be more this and that. I can really only speak to the last couple of years after COVID, because that's, the only years that I've been going to Origins. But we go to a lot of other conventions, not just Origins. So we still, despite having not gone very long to Origins, we have some good comparisons to, what conventions should be, even when they have different demographics. Because some of our other conventions, like Adepticon, right, is like almost entirely miniatures. There's, you might be able to get a card game in somewhere, but almost every table is miniatures. That's just how they run things. And then Gen Cons has miniatures, but they're not solely focused on that like Adepticon is. So,
yeah.
All that being said, Origins is the epitome. Excuse me, the epitome of like board gamer central. The ideas amongst even like the vendors that they brought in, the like other air quotes free stuff that was around for attendees to participate in, it was extremely like board gamer centric.
Yeah.
There was some tables for role playing. There was some other stuff as far as like they had like a movie going on in one room, which I'll bitch about that later. They had like a little play set up where, some of the kids could take like foam swords and, swing at each other and that sort of thing. So it's not like board gaming is the only thing you're allowed to do there, but
it's pretty focused.
It's entirely focused on board gaming.
Well, allegedly it was more mixed in the past, pre-COVID, and it kind of became unmixed, is what I'm to gather. So I kind of blocked it with your icon on this one, but so like in 2017, 17,000. In 2018, like 18.5. In 2019, like 20,000. That's pretty good growth, right? Then COVID hits. 2020 is canceled. 2021, there was attendance, but with like stipulations, So they had 10,000. Then 22 was 11,000. And then 20...
Also with a lot of stipulations.
Yes.
Because that was the year that we went.
We'll go over it.
And there was a bunch of, last minute changes and stuff.
23 we didn't go because of some ineptitude, which we'll explain on a later thing. But that was 16K, and then this year was 17K. There's dangling stuff here, but it doesn't really matter. It's not that there wasn't anything for attendees to do, but in my opinion, if I was an attendee, I wouldn't think it was worth like the money. If I had friends that were already going, like we're already kind of sunk cost into this event every year, that's one thing. But there's some painting classes, some like watch a movie. There's a LARPing thing for the kids, like that's cool, but I don't know.
See,
you could do that anywhere. You didn't have to do that at this convention.
See, but there's an argument to some of that is actually reasonable. Like the swinging the foam swords, that's actually great for kids. It gets out some energy because you're trying to get them to sit down and play board games all day, and like especially because you're bringing kids with you. I think that's actually super great. That's not why you paid to show up, right? But
yeah, and
the fact that it's there is actually super great. The movie is like, I already paid $90 for a ticket, which is a lot. So I expect there to be a lot there. And then there's a movie going on because it's like 8 o'clock at night and most other people are going to get food and I want to hang out because whatever. Well, yeah. You want to go watch a movie? Well, that's too damn bad. You got to pay another $25 before we even let you in the room.
Yeah, they had some little
Like-
concerts too, which is a little more reasonable than a movie, in my opinion, because a movie is like
Absolutely.
minimal work for anyone to put on, assuming you pay the
yes.
licensing stuff, respectively speaking. And I don't know if it was a movie or like short films or what. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't make sense to me.
The answer is paying for a performance. And I'm not even saying that they do this, but other cons will, like, if you come and perform or you run a role-playing table or some tournament, things like that, they will, like, pay you, like, a portion of the tickets because, you know, you're putting in all the effort and work in order to do this thing. So as, like, a performer, it totally makes sense of, like, hey, I want you on this panel to talk about making board games, or I want you to sing these songs. Like, I'm paying you to perform because I want to have things at my event. And I can still make money off that as the con by only paying you a portion of the ticket.
So
but
let's
a movie.
Let's touch on another thing real quick. Don't want to take that long. The vendors in attendance in the exhibitor hall, that's a whole other slice of pie. So in the past, we had all kinds of people or vendors attending. Usually big ones, like let's say GW, they don't attend anything unless it's Adepticon or Gen Con. And that's like it. Maybe Nova, maybe LVO. They don't go to that many. Unless it's like strictly Warhammer and then miniature game focused, they're not going to be there. They don't go to all these. They don't go to these little ones.
Yeah, they're extremely selective, despite having a dedicated team for that. It needs to be a huge convention to justify their costs because they don't do anything small.
Yeah.
Or it has to be like specifically Warhammer or like Warhammer focused.
So
and if it's
there used to be a lot of intermingling between publishers at these conventions, and apparently that's also gone sour from what I've heard this year from some of my other business friends. But like Asmodee used to be there. Asmodee, if you don't know, is kind of like the modern Milton Bradley of board games. They make like 60% of the board games you're probably going to see at Target or like college kids walking around with. They make Catan, they make Splendor, and a lot of other, I don't want to say they're common, but it's like as soon as you walk into a game store, instead of Monopoly, there are like a common set of board games you're going to walk into that are not at Walmart, but like your first foray into like better board games, better designed board games, I guess, is what I would call it. Mm-hmm. Well, they're not there.
Basically,
they've been gone for 3 years.
Yeah, when it comes to board games, the majority of everything you've seen is either Hasbro or like Milton Bradley, which is effectively, you know, less in existence right now because they're kind of fall underneath like Hasbro, and even some of that broke off and got sold to Asmodee. But like Asmodee is one of like the big four companies that makes almost every board game.
Yeah.
If it's not a part of one of those four companies, then it's like an independent guy doing his own thing.
Yeah, Asmodee, Fantasy Flight Games, and even Atomic Mass Games are tucked together really tightly right now. Whether they're literally owned by each other or not, it doesn't matter. They're like deliberately making decisions with only each other in mind.
Correct.
Anyway, so last year we didn't go, and that's basically because they screwed up trying to get a booth sorted out for us, and then we didn't hear back from the last minute after us harassing them for information, like, hey, I want to get set up. So we had to roll it over to the next year.
Yeah.
In short,
specifically, we spent months harassing them, and every time that we would get information, the only information we'd get is that our information was lost. Start over.
And I don't think that only happened to us. A lot of other publishers said we're just going to disappear. Catalyst didn't go last year, and they're like on the upswing. BattleTech's doing really good. They just had 2 giant Kickstarters these last few years. Mm-hmm. They're riding high right now, and they're still like, I don't know about this. They had a booth this year. I still don't know if they're going to come back. I don't know if they see it as worth it. I talked to them about their like events in their like demo play space, and Origins kept screwing up the scheduling and posting of their events. So how do people go to your events at a convention like this if they don't even know they exist?
Or if they show up to the event and your GMs have gone to dinner or something like that because they posted the wrong time.
Yeah,
So now
whatever.
you have someone shows up and then is disappointed in you as a company because someone else not a part of your company told them to show up at the wrong time.
So let's move on to number 2 because we haven't slayed this beast yet. So the costs, the GAMA paywall is what I'm calling it. Prices are going up, and I thought that they went up by just over 60%, spitballing it. I went back and looked. It's bad. So if you're a GAMA member, which is like $200+ a year, which shouldn't be that bad, right? You should get all these benefits, theoretically. Last year, you would save $200. You can't see the other column, but it's basically $200 off the booth price. So you're breaking even or making a little bit cheaper for each 10 by 10 space. So we had a 10 by 20, so it's like 2 of these. That was $12.55 last year. Now ours was rolled over from 22, but I wanted to have a clear year to year post COVID. What's the thing? The cheapest, and that's if you're a GAMA member, you could get it, is $21.60 for next year for a 10 by 20 with no caveats. You usually pay more for, is it a corner? Is it an island? Right? Whatever. You pay more for that. I'm saying it's just 10 by 20 and they can block 3 sides without telling you. It's $21.60. That's 76% more. If you didn't pay immediately on site, it's $23.75. Oh, it just gets worse, right?
Yep.
If you didn't pay it early enough, then it's $26.15. If you're not a GAMA member, then it's $27.60 paying on site. Then $30.35. Then $33.40. That's obscene. Just the markup.
And this is not even all of your costs, right? This is only the booth. Yeah, you still gotta pay
the difference,
insurance, gas, hotel. This isn't even this is maybe half of your cost, or should be maybe half of your cost at best.
We'll touch on the insurance thing, but in another slide. But the difference between $33.40 and $21.60, you're almost paying for another booth in the difference between the gap you're paying by your situation.
Yep.
It's insane. If you look at the growth compared to this, they've only just hit, or not quite hit, the number that they had in 2019. They haven't hit it yet. Mm-hmm. They haven't hit 2019 again. They haven't hit 20,000.
And I would like to point out that despite the number of people that showed up, I have heard from 100% of people that I've asked, back in 2019 when they were about the same size, there was way more going on. There wasn't giant empty spots in the back of the vendor hall. There was more variety of events and variety of vendors even amongst the
it's obscene.
The people that were there.
It's just obscene. I'll touch on some of that in the next thing, but so much extra and unnecessary. Okay, so while you mentioned it, the vendor hall this time was padded with empty space. There's a bunch of people arguing, or let's say taking opposite positions on this fact. But a lot of stuff out there was volunteer space, like a little event space, paint and take space, whatever, learn to play Space Hulk space. And it's cool that there's nonprofits filling up this space. They make a little money, nonprofit, it's for charity stuff. That's cool. I don't mind that. The problem is that they are not able to attract the right vendors anymore. I don't know what they've been doing. There are so many. I'm sorry, guys. It's Chinese dice, some whatever it is. The Chinese market has figured out that they can make polyhedral dice sets. That's cool. Whatever. Cheap dice for everyone. The problem is everyone thinks they can make a company off this. So there's 20 different dice places, but they're clearly offering the same Chinese plastic dice. There's some one-off companies, and some of them were there. But the problem is...
And there's some of those companies are actually making cool stuff on their own.
Right.
We absolutely carry some of in our store. Some of those companies, I mean, not that we're at Origin, but are at other places. But even when you see those 2 unique shops that are in the whole vendor hall that do dice, the other 8 are all the same.
Yeah, speaking of, shout out to Norse Foundry. Anyway, they did a good job. They make their own stuff. I appreciate them a lot. Anyway, so they introduced a lot of other weird random stuff. This was the first convention they had their own mobile app. I didn't even install it. I talked to people about it. You know, it could have worked. But if their events are not correct anywhere, having an app reference the same database that has incorrect stuff in it doesn't help you.
Mm-hmm.
There's weird priority access to everything. So there's GAMA membership and then there's not GAMA membership, which you kind of saw with the booth pricing. That's everywhere. See, it even exists for attendees.
Yes.
So it's kind of like when you're registering, like picking where your booth's going to be, you're in 4 tiers. And you have to wait in a group, like together, to pick your booths. So it is a board game convention. So you could say there's a sub-game of trying to screw each other by picking your booth spaces. Whatever.
Sure, but even if you say that picking your booth is some sort of net benefit, because not very many conventions let you pick your booth, that's fair.
I think it's better that way.
Even if that's true, all it really did was create a bunch of confusion, upset a bunch of people of like, why did, like, not just us, but there was others. Like, why did we have to pick a space outside the vendor hall because you said there wasn't room? But then when we're walking around the vendor hall, not only was there several vendors that didn't show up, but there was dead space that they didn't even have planned for a vendor. Like,
well, and so there's some other things. So a little tiny silver lining. The guy I was working with for only a small section of setting up this convention for us, for our booth in the play space, demo space stuff, getting us chairs and tables was great. He was super friendly, knew what he was doing. There was no nonsense. They were just there when we showed up. The thing that was silly, and this is not his fault, is that none of the shit was covered. They have now contracted with a union, Fern, on site, which they're at other conventions too. If you go to conventions, even not gaming ones, you'll probably see Fern around because they kind of like, they're in this weird space where they contract labor between the convention and the convention center itself. They fill a gap and they have a union, whatever. We would have to pay a pretty ridiculous amount to have our tables covered with tablecloth, which is kind of like the standard when you go to play tabletop games.
and specifically this time, it wasn't even tablecloths. It was cheap, just one-use vinyl.
Yes. Yep, that's 100%. They had these rolls. It's kind of like they were setting up like the tables at the beds at the doctor's office where you roll out that friggin' thing. And when you're done, they're like, well, we don't know if you're clean, so we're going to cut that off and roll out a new one. Like, that's kind of the idea of what they were doing. I'm not mad at that, but they could do better. This convention is still absurdly expensive for its size. They can afford a lot more than what they're doing. Anyway, this priority access thing went all the way around. Even for the vendors, there was priority access to setting up in the vendor hall. There was priority access where they restricted even vendors who weren't in the exhibit hall from going in before or during the people who had priority passes to be in 1 hour before everyone else on the first day of the vendor hall being open. Like, I don't...
There was priority access to the vendor hall for the attendees. If you paid extra, you could get in an hour early. But what was funny is that hour early that you could get in was the same time that they let the vendors in.
Well, so it doesn't make sense.
Most of that hour was like vendors setting up and like trying to like restock shelves and stuff. So if you paid extra to get in an hour early,
what did you get? Is my answer.
You couldn't get
my question.
Anything. Most of the booths were still covered up, and people were trying to still finish their coffee and whatever else. So there was nothing to do during that hour that you paid extra for.
It would be different if these people were trying to get the new set of Lorcana, the early stuff, or like when Magic was doing the 30th anniversary packs or whatever. Well, first of all, none of those companies are here. They save their releases for Gen Con because it's the biggest one, which I can already hear the gripes from the people who like Origins right now. Because again, they have that weird beef between Origins and Gen Con. But I don't get it. I don't get it. There's nothing premium that you're paying a premium for.
Correct. Let me change the argument there of it's not even about do you release at Origins or Gen Con. Of the people who did show up to Origins, people were complaining to me about how like a quarter, maybe less, but about a quarter of the vendors in the vendor hall weren't even willing to sell product because they were just showing off things that were available for pre-order.
Yes.
Like Army Painter showed up and they wouldn't sell anyone hardly anything
100%.
because they're like, no, we're showing you how the new paint system works, but
Yes.
you can't actually buy it from us. You can order it from us and we'll ship it to you, but we're not going to sell you
Yeah,
anything.
and we can't talk about why, but Tooth and Coats couldn't sell anything either.
Yep.
And Duncan Rhodes paint line, if you guys don't know. But there's just so many things. Okay, so we kind of talked on the LARPing and stuff. We'll just go to the next one. So the biggest thing I can say about this, attending, or if you're a vendor and your main product is a miniature game, this convention is not for mini gamers, period. The people who attend they are not used to painting stuff. 99% of them. There's still some miniature gamers to show up. You know, they exist. They're out there. There's miniature gamers who play role-playing games or board games. You know, there's people who do a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But those people are in the minority at this convention, period. So, like,
But not only are they in the minority, I feel like they were.
if 1,000
they
walk
were,
through,
like, sheltered.
if 1,000 walk through, 10 might be people who paint miniatures. And I mean for miniature games, not like the one-off
Sure.
D&D minis for the role-playing games. I'm saying like, no, we actually play miniature games here. It's bizarre because these things usually have a way more crossover as a tabletop gaming crowd. It's just typically more diverse, what games they play, what they like to do. People rotate, you know? People be like, oh, this few months, I just happen to be playing a lot of card games. And this next few months, I just happen to be playing a lot of miniature games. I just got in like a painting thing, and then I kind of fell out of a painting thing. Those people,
Well, this is
they're
part
not here.
of why I said it's like a board gaming hard convention, because it's if you go into almost any gaming shop, right, they're gonna have card games and board games and miniatures and stuff like that. And even if I only role play and I have never played a miniature game, I know that that box of minis requires you to paint it. And I've seen the guys in the store painting, or I've seen the guys play with painted miniatures. So they understand that painting miniatures is a thing. We had so many people that are so sheltered into only board games because they don't even go to like real game stores. They just play with their friends in their houses, that they like saw the miniatures and were like, wait, you have to paint these? Like, wait, they don't come assembled already?
Yeah.
Because they've only ever played board games where everything's pre-assembled, and if it's not painted, no one's telling you to paint it. Just play with them unpainted, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I put the quotes up there. I don't even want to say them. I've heard them so many friggin' times. It makes me, I don't like it. Okay, let's just go on. We talked about how Army Painter and Tooth and Coats weren't selling paint. Whatever. I have a salty side for Army Painter. But whatever. Let's move on. Okay, so there was like no connection making. Like business to business chit chats and stuff. Like
Unless you're talking about businesses or the vendors talking to each other, collectively bitching about the organization of Origins. We connected on that.
Oh yeah, we had other businesses that we distro to, that we deal with on a regular basis, leave before we could meet them there, because we were planning on like meeting up. They're gone.
They drove out and everything, by the way.
Yeah, they went to like the first day, had some meeting stuff to talk with other vendors,
With the organizers.
and they're like, yeah, we're out. This was so bad. This was a bad enough taste right away. We're done.
And
Can you
it's
imagine
worse than
driving
that
out and
because
then driving back? That's insane.
not only did you spend the money on the gas, but you know at that point there's almost no way that you're going to get like refunded hotel costs because you were expecting to check in that day.
No, it's absurd.
They didn't even decide to like stay and just play board games and participate in the event because they thought it wasn't worth being a vendor. They ate all of those costs, didn't even want to stay to have fun and play games because, you know, their shop's already covered or whatever else. Like,
and so
they decided all of that wasn't worth it.
one thing I heard about, which is kind of interesting, is there's usually like all the publishers meet up and socialize beforehand. The idea is a lot of publishing deals were made like upstairs at Origins in years prior. Let's say pre-COVID, whatever, when it was healthy. They stopped happening. It used to be that you go to this convention as a store because you would always leave with a box of one of every game that was at the convention. Because the idea
it wasn't
is
like every game, but yeah, there was like a
but
bunch of them.
It was
so
a
you get
lot.
a good variety.
It was a lot. You get variety, different publishers, stuff that's even hard to get because bringing stuff on site, everyone skips a lot of costs. But that stopped. They stopped even trying to do it. And Origins just like threw their hands up of like, well, they don't want to give it. Well, they're not making enough money to justify it anymore. So like if everyone's feeling bad about the convention, no one wants to just throw money away. Everyone wants to cooperate and get their stuff out there and played by new people. But like, there's a point where I've already lost $2,000. I'm not losing more. Yeah. Why would I throw another $1,000 of product away to give to these other stores, other publishers, whatever? It doesn't make sense.
Well, see, but that's where it I don't want to say it contradicts itself. It has more layers there than just I'm not making enough money, right? Because there's an argument too, if you're not making enough money at the booth, throwing these free games away at other vendors was how you made up for that difference. Because as soon as you left the con, you'd have a handful of emails of stores that are like, hey, my guys love the demo that I ran. I want to get some in the store to sell. It's like it was a way to fix the problem of not making enough money.
Oh yeah.
But Origins isn't willing to organize it anymore because that's a cost to organize. And despite them increasing the costs on everything everywhere by 60, 70+%, they're like, it's not worth it for the vendor to give away free games because the free games aren't making enough back because the costs are so high that even with the extra sales from the vendors after the con, the cost is still too high.
Yeah. Moving on. So number 6, I'm not even trying to softball this one. Semi-hostile and inept management. Good luck. I'll let you go off, Chris. You can say as much or little as you want. Probably we shouldn't use any names, but yeah, it wasn't good.
Fair.
So let's talk. Okay, I just want to make a note. Mandating insurance for your booth is like triplicating insurance. Just for clarity, because you're going to go off on this one, I'm sure. Next year, where we're not going, they are also requiring that you have workman's comp for your booth. Do you realize that a lot of the people working at these booths are like volunteers for the company? They don't actually work for them. They're not on payroll. You can't workman's comp them to begin with. It's impossible. That's not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
But Origins has this attitude of, well, we know better than you. We're the big corporation. Anyway.
They specifically said that. One person I talked to, I said, hey, I'm confused on to why do I have to do it this way specifically? It's not that I don't need insurance. I understand that. It's that it's like, I have to do it specifically this way that you're asking. And my insurance guy said, I don't understand why we have to do that. Your insurance already covers this. Why do we have to add their name to your policy? And when I brought that up, like my insurance guy, that's his whole job, his entire living. If anyone knows about this, it should be that guy.
Yeah, their name.
And after I brought it up, like he's willing to go and research and everything else, he still says, I don't understand. When I ask the Origins person, they say, well, we know better than your insurance person.
Oh, yeah. No,
Is your job insurance? I don't think it is.
It's absurd. And then they threatened to kick us out when we pushed back on this. We were professional.
And that was not me saying I wouldn't do their insurance. That was me asking, why did their name have to be on it? I confirmed that, like, here's my insurance. My insurance is already covering my booth. Like, I made sure that was taken care of. So it wasn't even me saying I wouldn't do the insurance. I was just asking, why does the name need to be on it? Because my insurance guy is confused by it.
Well, because then if you put their name and their address on it, which they didn't only want the address of the convention, they want their personal address on there too. It's weird. Because then they can make claims against our insurance directly. Mm-hmm. It's one thing if you say, oh, we have to insure the whole convention. We're all going to split up the costs. However we do that.
Which isn't even true, by the way.
I know it's not true.
You have to insure the whole con. But if you have all the vendors pay for their own individual space, then it turns out when I have an insurance policy, even with their name on it, it only covers the square footage that is assigned to me, which means all of your play space that the con has is either uninsured, which it's not.
Yes.
They're already paying for that insurance. So what they're doing is they're trying to double charge us in order to cover the fact, not just the insurance for our space, but they're overcharging us for all of the play space as well.
So
so specifically our insurance, this is one of the things that killed me. If you get insurance through them and you don't do this, put their name on your policy so they could make a claim against your insurance whenever they want for anything. When you make that thing, the receipt they give you is insurance is $33 for the week. Then you have to pay another $66 for administrative costs. So even they admit that the insurance for your tiny booth space is like $34 or $33. But they're going to triple charge you in order to cover costs of not your space.
For those who are doing math at home, it means they consider the inconvenience of sorting out insurance twice as valuable to them as the insurance actually costs. It's stupid. It's stupid.
It's no difference than
if I say
go into Starbucks and say I want a coffee. Well, the coffee costs you $4, but I'll let you come behind the counter and make it yourself for $4. Or if you make me make it for you, now it's $12.
Right. Yeah. Whatever. And how the workman comp thing is going to work, I have no idea. Zero
the answer
idea.
is you're going to have to prove workman's comp, but then you don't. There's no way to clarify what employees are employees and which ones are volunteers, which means the minute there's a claim, now there's going to be more costs involved than the insurance itself would even cover.
It could be a way that no more volunteers. Of course, they don't enforce these rules. They enforce them when they feel like being a pain.
Mm-hmm.
But they could easily say, no, that's the rule. It has to be workman's comp. Oh, you can't comp them? Well, the problem is they're not your employee, so they can't work in your booth. That means no volunteers. For anyone who doesn't know, owning a game store, running these conventions, it's kind of like being a musician that's not famous. You're not in it to be rich. All these costs are really tight. We barely make it. I don't advise it, but it's fun because we like games. We like the hobby. We're here for the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
When people turn these screws, we have to leave. We can't stay. We're not making bank. You might see Wizards of the Coast or GW being huge. They're it. There's your Taylor Swift up there. Then there's the rest of us.
I mean, even then, you're talking about like Asmodee. Asmodee is one of the biggest board gaming companies going to specifically a board gaming convention, and they said it's too much of a headache or too much cost, probably both, for even one of the fucking Taylor Swifts of the con to show up. It's not worth it for them.
Yeah, like the fact that they're not even showing up, that's like a market sign. It's like, well, okay, we're in a naval fleet, and the biggest ship said, we're out. I'm following them. You know what I mean? If they know something, they're probably right. Not always, but probably. Okay, the one little gripe that I had was that I stayed on top of this one, getting us set up and stuff. I used their explicit email-only exhibitor link to get our exhibitor badges.
Mm-hmm.
And they came out as GM full show badges for some reason. Not that I could see on my end, but on their end. So that means, the pronouns we put in there? No. None. And then we're going to be absolute salty butts about making them again for you and printing them on site.
Like, I don't even care about like the badges or whatever.
I don't either.
It's funny but
there are definitely
you follow
people.
The link, you do what they tell you to do, and then the system's incorrect. Well, at any other con we go to, like literally any of them, hey, you followed our instructions. It didn't show up well. We recognize that it's not just you. Several other people have had this issue. So it was our system that messed up.
There's
hey, sorry about that. Let me help you get this fixed. they wouldn't help. They said, no, go back to the thing, figure it out and come back. I know there's not a line behind you, but they sent me away to go figure it out and come back because they didn't want me standing there and didn't want to help, despite there being no one behind me
I literally,
at that time.
Well, they told you that we didn't have any badges at all. And I said,
correct.
That's not right. Then I logged in on my laptop with the internet
Showed them the badges
that we just set up, said, look at our account. From my side, they're right there. They're registered. I even have the date they're registered. It was like right on time. I don't know what you're thinking. No, we're the ones who are wrong. Not their links, not their systems, which are clearly wrong on a regular basis. I just don't understand.
Because my whole issue is, even if they were the wrong kind of badges, when I went to check in, why wouldn't they print off like, hey, here's the ones that you did register.
And I have this.
Oh, but these aren't exhibitor. We should get you some exhibitor ones. Instead, they were just like, no, we don't see any.
Well, and there's a generalization, I would say, about the higher level of GAMA. All the people that I would say were more competent or more effective at dealing with people, getting like the hype up, whatever, they left. During COVID, they went to other companies. They moved on. Kind of like I was saying, they sailed on to a better harbor. But the thing is, there's a bunch of decisions that were made that have nothing to do with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. They are actively interested in being a smaller convention. As a business, where I'm trying to cover costs, get enough sales through our booth to like make it all worth it, that's just a bad sign. You have to reach a certain size or have costs low enough that even if your convention's small, I'm still fine. Columbus is expensive. Origins itself is expensive.
But I think this is a good time to take a step back real quick and say that all of the things we're bitching about Origins, it's not actually Columbus's fault. They have one of the nicest convention halls that we've been to. Like I'm going to 5-6 cons this year. We go to cons every year. And like, I don't know what the new convention hall for Adepticon's going to look like because we haven't been there yet. But like, it's one of the nicest that we go to all year.
Yeah, it's like an airport
terminal.
terminal.
That, it's the worst con we go to all year because of the organizers of the event, not the convention hall itself. The convention hall is great. All the amenities around are awesome. Like,
oh yeah,
it's specifically the organization, not the convention hall or even the fact that it's in Columbus.
Absolutely.
I'm fine with all of that.
No, see, the problem that I see is that GAMA has just started making worse and worse decisions. All it takes for a company that's on their high horse to fall is making bad decisions. It happens all the time. It's like, the rich kid who like fumbled into wealth because he was born to a rich family. If he doesn't have any wits, he's going to lose it. It's just going to happen. He's going to make bad decisions and it's going to disappear. Most of the time, that's true. Ignoring politics. Let's just ignore all that. But anyway, like, as an example, Origins Game Fair used to take place the same week downtown Columbus as Pride Fest or whatever, like their week-long thing with parades and events and stuff downtown. Mm-hmm. They decided they wanted to deconflict them because people were complaining about parking. That's saying, hey, this thing that's a boon by crossing over and has been like the crossover for ever since we've been in Columbus, we're going to stop doing that. We think that that's bad. People at Origins are more concerned about not bumping elbows with people than being able to make it a good place to go to see more things. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
We can't justify going to that. Not when the booth cost just like almost doubled.
Well, the organization itself specifically made it more expensive, which is naturally going to deter people, both vendors and attendees. Because again, it was like $90 to get in, and then that bought you nothing. That was like every event you wanted to play in, you had to pay more for.
Meanwhile, Adepticon just changed locations, and our booth cost went up $200. That's the same as GAMA membership. I would rather pay that, even though Adepticon just paid a bunch of money, I'm sure, did a bunch of footwork to literally move their con to a completely different city and state.
Adepticon's costs had to go up by like a ton because they're going to have 3-4 times the space their costs went up huge. It's not like Origins where it's like, hey, the convention hall is going to charge us like an extra 5% next year,
Oh
so we
yeah.
have to figure out how to cover that. It's like, no, they actively like probably doubled all of their costs by switching locations, by getting such a bigger space. And even they said, but we have extra space. That means more vendors. We don't need to overcharge each vendor. We just get more vendors in with all this extra space.
Oh yeah.
So they only went up by like 200% or $200.
So I mean, there's not really much else to say. Basically, it put a bad taste in our mouth. I think Origins could recover and like continue to exist, but I think it's becoming something else. It's not a tabletop game convention general anymore. And I don't think it's ever going to be. The vendor hall is going to be, I don't mind it being smaller time publishers. I think that's fine. And in a way, that can be good if the costs were lower. But for now, you have to take an artist booth or not be selling anything to get a booth cheap enough to justify going. If you want to go and demo your games and sell people new starter sets and like get people, leaving the convention game in hand, ready to go get deep in this game, you don't want to be here. You just don't. It's not worth the cost. It really is not. Mm-hmm. And I gotta say, as like an attendee to these conventions, who wants to pay $90 for an event ticket to go see a bunch of tabletop game stuff, try something, like it, and be told you're not allowed to buy it? What?
Yeah.
We're not selling Maseratis and Lamborghinis here. What are we doing? It doesn't make sense.
Again, we go to a bunch of conventions, and some are, board gaming focused, some are tabletop. They all have their little quirks that make them a little different, and, sometimes those quirks make them a little hard to deal with. Sometimes it makes it, like, kind of weird and interesting because they draw, like, a weird crowd. But all of them, no matter their quirks, like, still make sense as an attendee. Like,
yeah,
there's weird background stuff that we have to deal with that gets quirky, but as far as like an attendee who doesn't have to deal with any of that stuff, it just makes sense. I go in, there's a bunch of vendors trying to show me cool stuff. There's a bunch of events, and I either pay a really cheap ticket because I still have to pay for all of those events, like Adepticon did, or I pay for an expensive ticket, but then most of those events are free.
Yeah, like the board game
this
library.
Is neither of them.
The board game library thing, that's free at almost every convention. At Origins, it's like the one thing you're paying for.
Yep. And that's $90, where every other con, like Adepticon, $25 gets you a board game library, gets you to walk the vendor hall, gets you like half of the con, right? None of the big events, but like
some of that at
$25 gets you basically at most of the con without your big event.
Some of that at Adepticon is less than that.
Yep.
At Adepticon,
if you just want a vendor badge was like what, $10 last year or something like that? 15 maybe?
No.
It was like
no. If you want to go to the vendor hall and buy something at Adepticon, it's free. It's free.
Even better. Like maybe I'm thinking of Gen Con or something, but yeah.
No, they did it. They did that special last year. They alternated, but especially last year they did it, and everyone loved it, and it helped attendance just shoot way up. Now the vendor hall is a freer space for people like, look, I'm not that into top games, but my friend is. I just want to go check that shit out. It's going to cost us nothing. Let's go get lunch and go walk around.
Yep. And but you want to do that at Origins? You got to pay $90 to even see what's there. Be disappointed in all the Chinese dice and the fact that half of the booths, won't sell you anything. And now that you've paid that $90, now for the few vendors that are willing to sell you a game and have something cool you're interested in, now you get to buy the game.
Right. The thing is, I do think that one-day passes might have been less than $90, but I'm not sure.
Also, that's sure fair, but
also the whole security thing, it feels unwelcome. People.
Oh yeah.
If you're just walking into that center and you don't even know what GAMA or Origins is, how are you going to walk all the way to the front, find the lines where you can buy a badge, and then go in? It's not really clear what it is. Like, you'd have to talk to some random strangers, which a lot of people aren't willing to do, to figure out what it is. You know what I mean? Like at the walkers by,
yeah.
Well, let's just say 10 minutes from the convention center, Literally cross any street from the convention center. You can't tell there's a convention in town. No one knows.
Whereas Gen Con's not the best example, right? But because they used to be linked, like even in Indianapolis, a giant major city, right?
Yeah.
Like that whole town, for the most part, you still know that a con's going on. There's so much influx of population that there's like hardly any hotel rooms left in the whole city. There's like weird like off the beaten path restaurants still have like 6 nerds with con shirts on. Like
in Indianapolis,
you still know
Gen Con rivals the Colts and the Indy 500. Not even screwing around. Indiana as a whole really cares about Gen Con going well. And Gen Con...
That's part of why they fancied up or rebuilt some of the convention center.
But that's because the convention organizers, the convention center, and the city, they all care. They want it to continue to be big and be supported at its size or bigger. Origins is literally walking in the opposite direction. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so just one last thing, though, because we could keep complaining and saying the same thing. The best thing that we saw by Origins, by far, is Agave and Rye again.
Yeah, shout out. It's that we found them by talking to a local a couple of years ago when we went, and they just told us about this place. It's right across the road. Turns out, like, one of the best restaurants in town. There's a bunch of really good stuff in town, right? It's not just them, but it's amazing. It's super convenient. It's like I said multiple times while we were there, because I was bitching about having to deal with Origins, the organizers. I'm like, man, if I don't get to go to Agave and Rye, it is not even worth coming to Columbus. And that's not fair to Columbus, but also it was so frustrating that's how it felt. Like,
oh yeah, no,
the fact that the best part of the con is to leave the con
and go eat tacos at a restaurant. Maybe it's just because the management at the restaurant was better. Sorry, I'll try not to dig too deep. But anyway, there's probably good people working for Origins, because like I said, there's competent, nice people there, but they're tucked under some other people who are not those things. And it seems pretty obvious. Like when I interact...
think I'm concerned that all of the good workers there were working for the convention hall, because every person that appeared to be working for the organization, not the convention hall, was a giant pain in the ass. All the like security people, even the volunteer security people with their little like orange vests on, none of them were being nice. They were all on power trips and wanting to be jerks and whatever else. Like,
yeah, power corrupts. I don't know. Even at this level. Jeez. That's so dumb. But yeah, I think you're right.
I've never put on a crossing guard vest and stood out and that made me feel powerful. I'm just saying. Like, yeah. I've done a bunch of dumb things in my life, but a bright orange vest that no, I don't even know why.
All right, well, we should probably wrap it up. I'm just going backwards through the slideshow, but thanks everybody for listening. Listen to us complain. We're probably going to try to do more game-related videos too, obviously. More like, how does this work? How does that work? How do you get started with this? But I also think that sharing some industry insight will be helpful for people if you're curious, like, why the hell is this happening? Why is GW fighting with itself? Well, those things are real, and I feel like everyone's not talking about them. If you're a business or publicly or whatever, it's just a different side of the coin. And I just want people to understand. Anyway, thanks for listening. You going to say thanks, Chris, or are you just going to ghost out?
Yeah, I was just I'll ghost everybody. It'll be fine. No, I appreciate listening to the rant, but I hope this was as informative and maybe save you some money in the next few years as it was cathartic for Sky to just vent.
Oh, I was not the only one venting. That's for sure. All right. See y'all later.